Hey up everyone, welcome back to the History of Football channel. Today on the channel I'll be doing a video about Hart Lane, the former home ground of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I've done a few videos on former stadiums. Today I'll be talking about Hart Lane, the history of the ground, looking at some old pictures and talking about some facts of the stadium, so stay tuned for the rest of the video. Tottenham Hotspur were founded in 1882, but they did not play at Hart Lane until 1899. The club had a couple of temporary grounds before this. In 1899 they moved to a piece of land behind the White Hart pub. Construction of Hart Lane happened between October and December 1898, and the new location was to the east of Tottenham High Road. As part of the construction, some of the stands from the club's previous home ground, Northumberland Park, were moved to Hart Lane. The first match to be played at Hart Lane was a friendly against Notts County on the 4th of September 1899, with 5,000 people in attendance. Tottenham Hotspur would win the match 4-1. The first competitive game on the ground was held 5 days later, where 11,000 people attended to watch them play against Queensport Rangers, with Tottenham winning 1-0. In 1904, the ground had an overall capacity of 32,000, but in a match during the FA Cup against Aston Villa, the club was fined after a pitch invasion by fans. In 1908, Tottenham Hotspur were admitted into the second division of the Football League. Their first league game at Hart Lane occurred on the 1st of September 1908 against Wolverhampton Wanderers, where Tottenham Hotspur won 3-0. In the early 20th century, Tottenham Hotspur upgraded Hart Lane on a massive scale. Based off the designs of stadium architect Archibald Leach, the first to be designed was the main west stand. It was a 2-tiered structure with seating of 5,300. At the time, it was the largest stand in the United Kingdom. It cost £50,000 to build, and it was opened on the 11th of September 1909 in a First Division match against Manchester United. Also, there was major work done on the East Stand, and by the onset of the First World War, Hart Lane had a capacity of 50,000. In the 1920s and 30s, the stadium went under further construction. In 1923, the Paxton Road end was constructed, as was the Park Lane end. In 1934, the club decided to rebuild the East Stand, which cost £60,000. The middle section of this stand became known as the Shelf. With the construction of all the stands, Hart Lane had a capacity of 80,000. The East Stand was officially opened on the 22nd of September 1934 in a match against Aston Villa. During the 1940s and 50s, Tottenham Hotspur attracted some of the largest attendances in the country, especially in 1961 when they won the double. They had an average attendance of 53,000. In 1953, floodlights were installed at the stadium and were used first in a friendly against Racing Club de Paris. Hart Lane had further renovations in the 60s and 70s. In 1980, in a bid to improve facilities and upgrade was considered to be then an outdated stadium, a new phase of redevelopment began, which transformed the stadium. In 1980, the West Stand was demolished and replaced with a new West Stand, which cost the club between £3.5 to £6 million. It was opened in a match against Wolverhampton Wanderers, which Tottenham won 6-1. In the late 1980s, the East Stand was redeveloped, and due to the Taylor Report in the 1990s, all the standing sections of the ground were changed to all-seater, and the South Stand was demolished in 1994. With all these renovations and changes to the stadium, it left Hart Lane with a capacity of 36,240. In the early 2000s, the capacity of Hart Lane had fallen significantly behind other Premier League clubs, and there were talks about Tottenham Hotspur either redeveloping Hart Lane or moving to a new site. There was talks of the club moving to Wembley Stadium, but this was ruled out. Also, there were plans for the club to move to the Olympic Stadium in Stratford. However, the club decided to build a new stadium. On the 14th of May 2017, Hart Lane hosted its final match in the Premier League and the final match at the ground in total, which was against Manchester United. It ended in a 2-1 victory for Tottenham Hotspur. The last goal to be scored at the ground was by Manchester United striker Wayne Rooney. Demolition work happened at the stadium the following day after the match, and demolition was complete in August 2017. Along with hosting Tottenham Hotspur matches, the ground hosted many international matches featuring the England team, and probably the most notable took place in 1935 when England played against a Nazi Germany side. This led to protests outside the ground by Jewish supporters, and the match finished 3-0 in England's favour. And strangely enough, between 1995 and 1996, Hart Lane hosted gridiron or American football, and it was the home ground of the London Monarchs. Because the pitch could not accommodate a regulation length American football field, the London Monarchs received special permission from the World League to play on a 93-yard field. One symbol at Hart Lane which stood out was the fighting cock. The original cockerel on a ball was erected in 1909 and was cast by William James Scott. This stood atop the west stand but was removed in 1957 for upgrading of the floodlights. It reappeared on the east stand in December 1958. In 1989, the original cockerel was removed to be replaced by fiberglass replicas that were placed on top of both the east and the west stand. The original cockerel was moved to the executive suites where it stayed for many years, and then to the west stand reception. It was moved to the Lily White House in 2016. There's also a cockerel at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium which overlooks the pitch, and it's up very, very, very high, and I think that you can actually go up there and get close to it if you're on one of them guided tours. Tottenham's biggest ever win came at Hart Lane in an FA Cup tie against Crewe in February 1960, which finished 13 goals to 2. The biggest win in the Football League happened on the 22nd of October 1977 against Bristol Rovers, which Tottenham won 9 goals to 0. They also won a Premier League match 9 goals to 1 against Wigan Athletic on the 22nd of November 2009. The club's biggest defeats at Hart Lane were in 1914 against Sunderland, which finished 6 goals to 0 in Sunderland's favour, and then also on the 6th of March 1935 in the North London derby, Arsenal defeated Tottenham 6 goals to 0. The record attendance at Hart Lane came on the 5th of March 1938 against Sunderland in the FA Cup. 75,038 people attended that game. In total, Hart Lane hosted 2,533 competitive Tottenham Hotspur matches. So that concludes my video on Hart Lane, the former home ground of Tottenham Hotspur between 1899 and 2017. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know which ground you'd like me to feature next. I'm sorry for the lack of content that I've been making over the last month or so. Obviously, I've run a couple of other YouTube channels and I do other things outside of YouTube, so I don't have a lot of time to make videos, but I hope you enjoyed this one. Anyways, this has been History of Football, and I'll catch you all later in the next one. Tatty bye for now.